What is going on, everyone? I want to talk today about my high yield journey. I've been involved with high yield funds for a number of years now, a couple years, okay, and just my own experience with high yield funds, what I've learned, um, and all of that. I would love to know what your journey is. Now, I have this dream of not only fighting dragons, but taming them and having them come and bend to my will. So, did that happen? Let's get into it. So, I got into high yield funds, as you can see the shaded area down there, in 2023, at the very bottom of that little corrective period we had. Now, it wasn't some great investing strategy by me, it wasn't great technical analysis. That's just when I started. It just so happened to be towards the bottom of this corrective period. Guys, it was just dumb luck when I got into these funds. Now, when I first started getting in them, I was a little skeptical, for sure, because I didn't quite understand how something with a declining share price would actually be a positive thing in a retirement account. I initially was going to go with JEP-I and JEP-Q and retire hopefully in 5 or 6 years. But I thought, you know what, I could fast track it with high yield funds, but I was still skeptical. I wasn't quite sure that it would work for me. And then I went to YouTube. I joined a couple Discord servers, this and that. And the more I started talking to people that have been invested a little bit longer than myself, and I saw what was happening, that I thought, you know what? This could actually work. Like, the distributions could outpace the share price decline, making these a positive investment. And then when the initial investment is paid off, the return on investment, and you'll get profit month over month. What a great plan. This could really be a retirement position. And so, yeah, I started going full-fledged. I got into Tesla, got into OARK and Clip. What is Clip? That is a Chinese internet company. Now, why did I get into Clip? Well, it's my fault. People were in it, they were liking it, yada, yada. I followed the herd and the lemmings and jumped into Clip. I know nothing about Chinese internet. Why was I even in this? But I wasn't in it long before I realized my first issue with high yield funds. And what was happening with Clip was it was dropping at such a rate that the dividends were not outpacing the share price decline. So I sold it. And I told people in the group that I was in that I sold it. And not some people were like, yeah, sure. But there were some people that were like, that's crazy. You don't want to be rich. Why would you sell Clip? You're going to make millions off of it. All this stuff, right? And some people were like actually angry that I sold Clip out of my account. It wasn't their money or anything else, but they were still mad that I sold something. So that was, an odd experience, but it is what it is. And then during this period here in the market, after the corrective period, AMZ came out, NVIDIA came out, and QQQI, and a lot of other stuff. And it was a great time. I consider it the golden age of high yield investing, for me anyway. Because at this point in time, you get let's say a 50-cent dividend in AMZ, and then it would go up like 75 cents or 60 cents, the share price. So we were getting some appreciation and distributions, and quite a few of them that I held. And it was a great time. And I thought, this is it, boys. This is it. We're going to be retired soon. And I am going to be enjoying that life forever because of high yield dividends. Now, a lot of people were talking about how bad they were at this point in time, but I didn't see it because it wasn't reality. It wasn't happening to me. The things were being absolutely incredible. And then, silence, if you will. The music stopped and something happened. And I recognized that holding these in retirement might be a bad idea. What happened, you ask? Well, we had this little dip over here that you can see to the left. And then it ripped up past that point, the markets in general. Well, none of my stuff, even though their underlyings were going up, the high yield dividend fund was capped so hard that it wasn't getting back to those prices. And then we had this second dip here. And it really hurt the funds. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is a major problem. Now the distributions are declining. Now the share prices are declining. And the market overall is ripping. What will happen when inevitably we get a correction or crash? And not just that, what about a bear market? If these two little dips did that, what's going to happen overall to these funds long term, particularly if there's a long, prolonged down period? And, so I got real nervous with these dips because we weren't collecting, because the dividends were dropping and the share prices also were not recovering. I had a eureka moment and I had to sell. I mean, I was so worried about what would happen when we crash or correct or through a prolonged down period if two little dips did that. So yeah, I started selling off my high yield positions back in the fall of 2024, starting roughly in October. And I started talking about the issues I was seeing, particularly for people who wanted to hold it long term in a retirement type position. And I started making videos about this. And then I got told that, I'm not a real investor because I was selling out of this. And people were not happy that I was pointing out potential negatives, or not just potential, but real negatives that I were seeing that would happen in the future. And and I realized that I needed to leave certain areas because I just didn't want to be around that any longer. And then inevitably, there was a mild crash. And it was mild. This was not a major crash. It was just a couple months. And what happened? People got absolutely wrecked. I saw people's accounts. Oh man, it really hurt people. Like they were so heavy in margin and HELOC and all these other things. And I saw people that now they're having to live off, I'm not kidding you, are now having to live off Social Security, that had a whole bunch of retirement position, and their accounts just got decimated. That when that market was ripping, back here, margin and HELOC, and the people thought the market would never go down. And people got caught up in that during this crash, and they got hurt really, really bad. A lot of people had margin calls. It affected, depending on how much margin you had or how much it affected people in different ways, but it had some serious impacts on a lot of people. And that really showed, what over leveraging in these accounts can do, and that all, how greedy, how being greedy could really affect you. So now as the market continues to rip, the cycle turns, right? A lot of those people got liquidated. Some are still in, obviously, and a whole new batch of YouTubers and high yield investors have come in, and as the market has been ripping, and we're seeing the same types of things happen. We're seeing people getting over leveraged on different funds, and now people are getting over leveraged in funds that are even have more downside potential risk than yield max, that have some extra leverage attached to them, like the round hill weeklies and stuff like that. And so as the cycle turns, we're inevitably going to see the same types of things happen to people's accounts. And what's going to happen long term for me, just me in my retirement position, if I stayed in high yield funds during that crash, I would have been absolutely in trouble. I didn't have enough capital. I realized I would need 8 to 10 times more shares than I had, and there was just no point in reinvesting 80 to 90 to 100% over something for a retirement position that, if we had a bear market, would absolutely just destroy my account that I'm trying to, take care of my wife and myself on. So I've learned, just for me, the best way to work high yield funds, just for me, is a small percentage of my account. Their strengths are what? Return on investment, which I have with Nvidia. I didn't sell it during that whole period. I have return on investment, and now every month it pays me a distribution, even though the distributions continue to decline over time. Even though the share price continues to decline over time, I continue to make the distributions. I'm not pulling any money back into it. I'm just using those distributions because it's profit now, and putting that into my SPY or my QQI and just other stuff, right? So I've learned, for me, to work with the strengths of the funds and not the weaknesses. What are the weaknesses? Well, we saw those weaknesses during down periods. And if there's a down longer than down 2 months, it's really going to hurt a lot of people. What is their strength? Return on investment and cash flow. To me, their weakness is a retirement position, holding something like that depreciates over time, long term. Now, I know there's going to be a bunch of spreadsheets and dividend calculators and all that. And you guys, anyone can do what they want with their own money. But this is just what I feel. And I feel better about having something that has a better share price stability, that the distributions will go up over time. And I have found that to be a better position for me to be in than to be fully invested in a high yield funds. For retirement, I'd love to hear your story. Talk to you later.